There are places on this earth that feel closer to the heavens than to the world of men. The peaks of the Andes are such a place. Here, in the thin, frigid air above 20,000 feet, the veil between worlds seems gossamer thin. The mountains are not just rock and ice, they are gods. They are the Apis, the lords of all creation, who command the weather, the water, the very lifeblood of the civilization that rises and falls at their feet. For centuries, they have kept their secrets locked in chests of ice. But sometimes the mountains speak. In September 1995, the volcano Nevado Empato, a colossal peak in southern Peru, began to stir. Its heat, rising from the Earth's core, melted a part of its icy summit that had been frozen for 500 years. High-altitude anthropologist Johann Reinhard and his climbing partner were ascending the mountain when they found something that would stun the world. It was a bundle, dislodged by the melting ice, that had tumbled down the slope. As they got closer, they realized with a growing sense of awe and dread what they were looking at. It was the body of a young girl, perfectly frozen, her knees drawn up to her chest, her face serene. This was the Ice Maiden, who would come to be known as Juanita. Her discovery was a global sensation. But as scientists began to study her, a far more profound and disturbing story emerged. She had not died by accident. She had been killed, left on the mountain peak as a sacrifice. Analysis revealed a massive cerebral hemorrhage, the result of a single, powerful blow to the head. This was not just a discovery. It was the scene of a 500-year-old ritual murder. And yet, the most haunting detail was her expression and the placid state in which she was found. It led to a deeply unsettling question that has echoed through the decades. Why would a child, in the final moments before her death, seem so calm, so accepting? Why, as some have described it, did she seem to smile before she died? The answer to that question reveals a truth more shocking than any imagined curse. It is a story of faith so powerful it could demand the unthinkable, of a journey to the edge of human endurance, and of a complex biochemical cocktail that prepared a child for her own death. This is the story of the shocking sacrifice of the Inca Ice Maiden. Before we ascend the sacred mountain to uncover this truth, I invite you to subscribe. Our channel is dedicated to exploring the most profound questions of the human past, and your support helps us continue that quest. And please, add your voice to the conversation in the comments below. The past belongs to all of us. Now, let us begin the journey. Juanita was just the beginning. Her discovery opened a new and extraordinary chapter in our understanding of the Inca Empire. Inspired by her find, archaeologists began to search the peaks of other sacred mountains across the former empire, from Peru to Argentina. In 1999, on the summit of the volcano Llullaillaco, at a staggering altitude of 22,100 feet, higher than any other archaeological site on Earth, Johann Reinhard and his team found something even more astonishing. It was a small, undisturbed burial platform containing 3 more frozen children. A young boy about 7 years old, a young girl about 6, and a teenage girl of about 13, who would become known as the Llullaillaco Maiden. The state of their preservation was almost miraculous. They were not desiccated mummies, they were frozen in time. Their skin was soft, their internal organs were intact, their faces were so perfectly preserved they looked as if they were merely asleep. Scientists could see the downy hair on their arms, the lice in their hair, the food still in their stomachs. These were not artifacts, they were children. And they provided an unparalleled window into a lost world. The Llullaillaco Maiden sat cross-legged, her head bowed forward as if in slumber. She wore a magnificent tunic of the finest wool, adorned with intricate geometric patterns. Her hair was elaborately braided, and she was surrounded by a collection of exquisite offerings. Tiny statuettes of llamas and humans made from gold, silver, and shell, pottery vessels containing food, and bags of coca leaves. The little girl, her face bearing a lightning strike from an ancient storm, was wrapped in a thick blanket. The boy was bound tightly, a hint of vomit on his clothing suggesting he may have suffered from altitude sickness. Unlike Juanita, none of them showed any signs of violent death. They had been placed in their tombs, it seemed, and simply allowed to freeze to death. The scientific analysis of these children's bodies, particularly through their hair, allowed researchers to reconstruct the final year of their lives with astonishing detail. Hair acts like a chemical timeline. By analyzing different sections, scientists can determine a person's diet and drug use over time. And the story their hair told was remarkable. For most of their lives, all three children had eaten a standard peasant diet of potatoes and vegetables. But in their final year, their diet changed dramatically. They began to eat elite foods, maize and dried llama meat, the food of the Inca nobility. This tells us they were chosen for their fate a full year in advance. They were plucked from their humble villages and elevated to a new, rarefied status. The chemical timeline also revealed something else. In the last few months of their lives, they began to consistently consume two substances: coca leaves, the source of cocaine, and alcohol in the form of chicha, a fermented maize beer. In the final weeks, the levels of these drugs in their system spiked dramatically. They were being systematically and increasingly sedated. This was the first clue to their calm, placid end. They were not dragged up the mountain screaming. They were led in a carefully managed, altered state of consciousness. To understand why a civilization as sophisticated as the Inca would sacrifice their most perfect children, we must abandon our modern notions of life, death, and religion. We must enter the Inca cosmos. For the Inca, the world was alive with sacred power. This power, or huaca, resided in places, objects, and people. A strange rock, a spring, a mummy of an ancestor, all could be huaca. But the most powerful huacas of all were the great mountains, the Apis. The Apis were not just geographic features, they were sentient, powerful deities. They were the masters of weather, the controllers of the rain and snow that fed the rivers and irrigated the crops. They were the guardians of the animals and the ultimate source of life and fertility. But they could also be wrathful. A drought, a flood, a volcanic eruption, a devastating earthquake, all were signs that the Apis were angry, that the cosmic balance was broken. The relationship between the Inca and their gods was governed by a central principle: Aini. Aini means reciprocity, a system of balanced give and take that governed every aspect of Inca life, from farming to family relations to faith. If you received a gift, you were obligated to give one of equal or greater value in return. The world ran on this sacred debt. If the Apis gave you a good harvest, you gave them offerings of textiles and food in return. But what could you possibly give to the gods when the world was falling apart? What was an offering of sufficient value to placate a furious mountain god who was threatening your very existence with a catastrophic drought or a plague? The answer was the Capacocha. The Capacocha was the most solemn and important ritual in the Inca Empire. It was a ceremony of human sacrifice, performed only in times of extreme crisis or major state events, like the death of the Sapa Inca, the emperor himself. But it was not seen as a simple act of killing. It was the ultimate act of reciprocity. The Inca would give the Apis the most perfect, most precious thing they possessed: a pure, unblemished child. The children chosen for the Capacocha were considered the most beautiful and physically perfect from across the vast empire. They could be the children of local lords or commoners who were elevated by this honor. From the Inca perspective, this was not a tragedy for the family. It was the highest honor they could ever receive. Their child was not going to die. They were going to be transformed. They would become a divine messenger, an eternal emissary to the gods, living in the palace of the Apu and speaking on behalf of their people for all time. The family of a sacrificed child would gain immense status and privilege. The child, it was believed, was being granted immortality. The Capacocha ceremony was a long and elaborate affair. Once chosen, the children, along with their families and priests, would begin a great pilgrimage, a journey that could last for months and cover hundreds of miles, to the imperial capital of Cusco, the navel of the Inca world. Along the way, they were treated as living deities. People would line the Inca roads to pay homage to them, offering them gifts and prayers. In Cusco, they would be brought before the Sapa Inca himself, the son of the sun god Inti. Great feasts and ceremonies were held in their honor. They were showered with the finest food, drink, and textiles the empire had to offer. This entire process was a slow, deliberate indoctrination. For months, the child was removed from their old life and steeped in an atmosphere of sacred importance. They were told repeatedly by priests, by nobles, by the emperor himself, that their destiny was a glorious one. They were the saviors of their people. They were chosen by the gods. After the ceremonies in Cusco, the final journey began. A new procession would form, including the child, priests, and dignitaries, but not the parents. They would travel to the specific Apu that needed to be appeased. This final pilgrimage was the ultimate test of endurance. They would ascend the mountain, climbing higher and higher into the thin, oxygen-deprived air. The journey would take days or weeks. They would camp along the way in specially prepared huts, acclimatizing as best they could to the brutal altitude. This journey itself was a key part of the process. It was physically and mentally exhausting. The child, already in a state of heightened religious fervor, was being pushed to the very limits of their body. As they climbed, the world of the living would literally recede below them, while the realm of the gods, the cold, silent, sun-drenched peak, grew closer. They were walking out of their own lives and into the divine. And now we come to the final hours and the answer to the question of the smile. Let us reconstruct the final moments of the Llullaillaco maiden based on the scientific evidence. After her long journey from Cusco, she and her attendants reached the summit of the great volcano. The air is painfully thin, with less than half the oxygen available at sea level. Just breathing is a monumental effort. The cold is unimaginable, far below freezing. Here at the top of the world, a small stone platform and a tomb have been prepared. In these final hours, the drugs in her system reach their peak. The coca leaves she has been chewing numb the cold, dull the senses, and produce a mild sense of euphoria. But more powerfully, she is given a large amount of chicha, the strong maize beer. The archaeological evidence is clear. A final feast was held on the summit, and she was heavily intoxicated. The combination of alcohol and the cocaine from the coca leaves would have created caquethylene in her body, a substance known to produce a more potent and lasting sense of well-being. So she is not fully lucid. She is in a heavily altered state, a chemical cocoon protecting her from the reality of her situation. On top of this pharmacological effect, there is the crushing power of the altitude. Severe hypoxia, or oxygen deprivation, profoundly affects the brain. It causes confusion, disorientation, lethargy, and can even induce feelings of euphoria and detachment, a sense of blissful disconnection from one's surroundings. Now add the final, most powerful layer, her psychological and spiritual state. For a year, she has been told she is divine. She has been worshipped. She has been prepared for this single, glorious moment. She is not dying, she is fulfilling her sacred destiny. She is about to meet the Apu face to face. In her intoxicated, hypoxic, and deeply indoctrinated mind, this is not an execution. It is a coronation. It is her wedding to the mountain god. The priests would have conducted the final ceremonies, chanting prayers, making offerings. Then, sitting cross-legged in her tomb, surrounded by her precious burial goods, she was given a final, large draught of chicha. Her head would have slumped forward. The combination of the alcohol, the drugs, the cold, and the lack of oxygen would have simply caused her to lose consciousness. She would have drifted into a deep sleep from which she would never wake. The extreme cold would have quickly and painlessly shut down her body, inducing a fatal hypothermia. She was buried alive, but she almost certainly did not know it. She simply went asleep. The smile, then, is not a smile of happiness. It is the serene, placid expression of a person who has passed from consciousness in a state of chemical peace and spiritual acceptance. It is the face of a child who has been convinced that her death is the most important act of her life. It is a testament to the terrifying power of a belief system to transform an act of ultimate violence into an act of supreme honor. The shocking part of the sacrifice is not just the death of a child. It is the meticulous, systematic, and profoundly effective process of convincing that child to embrace it. The discovery of these ice mummies has been a priceless gift to science. They are time capsules of unparalleled clarity, teaching us more about Inca culture, diet, health, and technology than any other find. They are a direct, tangible link to a world that was destroyed 5 centuries ago. But they also present us with profound ethical questions. These are not just specimens. They are the carefully preserved remains of children who were sacrificed. In museums behind climate-controlled glass, they are viewed by thousands. Are we honoring them, or are we desecrating their sacred tombs for a second time? Are we treating them as ancestors or as objects of morbid curiosity? There are no easy answers, and the debate continues between scientists, indigenous communities who see them as their ancestors, and the governments who are their legal custodians. In the end, we are left with the human story. The story of a society that, in its struggle to impose order on a chaotic world, made a terrible bargain. They believed that to sustain the life of the many, they had to take the life of the chosen few. The ice mummies of the Andes are a testament to the heights of Inca power and the depths of their faith. But they are also a heartbreaking memorial to the children who were asked to pay the ultimate price for their civilization's survival. They are the messengers who never came back, their voices finally unearthed from the ice, telling a story not of curses or angry gods, but of the profound and unsettling power of human belief. Thank you for joining us on this ascent into the past. If this story has offered you a deeper understanding, please show your support by liking and subscribing. And share your thoughts on the ethical and historical questions this discovery raises. The past is not dead, it is not even past. And its lessons are etched in the faces of the children who sleep on the mountains of the gods,